So we've got two of these manifolds. We've got Heatmiser UH8N, which is the 12-volt thermostat version. So all the cabling is existing. The manifolds were existing. What the customer wanted was remote access to his heating controls, just to try and improve efficiency, really. Now, one major oversight from the original installers, which we'll look at in more detail, there is no cable down to the boiler for the boiler enable to actually get the boiler calling for heat, or get the boiler to fire, I should say. So previously there was these battery powered RF units and a receiver down in the heating cupboard downstairs, which we'll have a look at. Very unreliable, boiler not always switching, place was cold. Next problem was that both manifolds had been piped the wrong way. So essentially the pump was just pumping against one-way valves. And so we've had to get a plumber in to adjust the pipe work, put some isolators in here as well, so the manifolds are actually piped the right way around and the pump's pumping correctly. So that was a big piece of work. And we've had to find a solution for wireless switching, so we'll have a look at that in a moment. So we're just currently replacing all of the old ambiente thermostats for these platinum silver 12-volt Heatmisers. These are the Neostats, part of the Neo system, so we can get remote access to these via the hub. Oh, look at that, what a treat. Brand new snips. It's like 60-minute makeover, isn't it? Best snips in the world. Ergonomic. Oh, just feel perfectly weighted in the hand. Anyway. So the great thing about using the 12-volt stats is you just use cat cable. It's 12-volt, so you're not sort of constrained by your regular cable zones, safe zones, like if you're working with 230-volt stuff. Only downside is they're just a little bit fiddly, and you have to make sure that the terminals on the back are really tight just to grip onto the cable. Not that you wouldn't make sure that your terminations are tight anyway, but you know, you have to double the cable over because it's so skinny. And just make sure that, you know, it's really easy for the cable to pull out the back of these terminals. You see this? There we go. You see it's like a little U-shape left, even when it's super tight. So you just have to make sure that the cable's gripped properly. Right, so that was the route between the manifold and the heating cupboard down here. So where are we? This cable here is the boiler enable. So that goes outside to the boiler in the garden, which is we've got a bit of a pit here with a sump in it, and it's sort of, I don't know, 10 meters that way in the garden. There is no control cable between the manifold that we've just come from upstairs and this room. So we heard about these through the EFIX YouTube channel, couldn't find, give me something in the comments if you know of an alternative solution to these RF Solutions Mainslink units. We did a bit of research and we couldn't find anything that looked as easy to work with and as bulletproof as these. Unfortunately though, the switching, so these are the receiver units, RX, and then I've got these transmitter units down here. So when these receive any sort of 230 volt input, you get the little red light on. They start to transmit. And then here, down here. So they come as a matched pair already. You don't have to do any sort of pairing. These are on all the time. They're constant power. When they receive from the transmitter, they then do a live out. Now this was my attempt. Essentially, they were switching, but it was taking a while, one, and two, it's intermittent. So we'd use the Heatmiser app to call for heat. The transmitters are wired into the UH8s upstairs, into the boiler enable. That would then turn the transmitter on. The transmitter would then communicate via RF with the receiver, and then once that link is made, we get a live out. That was intermittent, presumably because of the length of the run, the makeup of the fabric of the building, so concrete, foil-backed insulation, timber, plaster, so on and so forth. I just think it was a bit of a challenge for it. These have a long-range mode in them, so there's a little jumper. In fact, there's 3 jumpers that do different things. One is a long-range mode, so we tried it in long range and short range. It's just not happening. If I just go over here. So what we had to do in the meantime, because we've been waiting for stock of the silver thermostats from Heatmiser that we've just looked at upstairs. What we've had to do in the meantime, before returning today, just to fit the final few stats and get this working, is have this transmitter unit, which I've taken off one of the UH8s upstairs, just got it on a plug top in one of the Heatmiser smart plugs. So actually, this is now working as boiler enable, and the customer's got this set to a schedule. So what that means is a temporary fix. We're going to sort this out today, obviously, but as a temporary fix, you've got 2 manifolds upstairs. One's got 3 stats, one's got 4 stats. The stats can call for heat of the manifold. That will open the actuators, open those loops, and water can flow. The pumps come on, etc., etc. But at the moment, that doesn't call for heat. It's this thing that communicates with the receiver and asks the boiler for heat. So we've got this set to a schedule so that between the hours of, for argument's sake, 8 and 10 in the morning, 4 and 7 in the evening, this plug is on. As soon as that plug's on, transmit, receive, boiler calls for heat. So if I do this, let's just turn that plug off. There we go. And actually, you can hear that relay click out. See, we've no longer got a live out. It's that instantaneous. It's really good when it's in range. Listen carefully. You could hear that relay clicking. Banging. Really good, that. So what I'm going to do is take these out of the equation. We're going to move these, hopefully, upstairs. We're going to mount them in something like this, a bit bigger, an IP rated adaptable box. Even though these, I think, are IPs 54 maybe. use my favourite term, belt and braces, just to mount these in a box. The box is waterproof, essentially, and these are waterproof, so we'll have no problems with moisture. And hopefully bringing them up from the basement onto the ground floor level is going to mitigate this problem that we're having with the wireless range. So this heating has been like this for 10 years with no real control. I mean, these are mains powered. So of course they're going to be bulletproof, more bulletproof than the previous solution, which was these piddly little battery powered RF switches upstairs, and then there was some receivers mounted up here. Yeah, so let's give that a go. Fortunately, you can see my cable rod up there, orange cable rod. There's a hole that's already been made for some pipe work, which is no longer being used, below the damp course. So, if required, I'm going to run a cable out there, some rubber flex. It's all going to be on show. It's RCD protected, so it doesn't need to be armoured or anything like that. Rubber flex is UV rated, so it'll be all right in the sunlight, and we'll get those mounted outside. So let's have a look at that. Right, so I've wired the transmitter back in. So you see we're picking up a neutral and an earth from the main supply, and then a switch out of the boiler enable. So let's just turn it back on. I don't think there's any thermostats calling at the moment, so let's just turn a thermostat on. See here, with no thermostats calling for heat, it essentially looks like this is off. So it's not on in the background, it just waits to receive a live input. So we've just got one of the zones calling. You can see now we've got a live input, and this flashes to show you that it's transmitting every now and again. There we go. So that's this end sorted. Let's see if we can look at the receiver end and get those communicating. Right, what I'm going to do is just temporarily wire in this 2-core to give this a supply, and this wasn't always here. This was over this way a little bit with some 4-core flex. Because it was intermittent rather than just not working, I just tried to move it a little bit, closer, just a tiny bit. I didn't have much time last time I was here, just to see if it was a case of just moving it slightly would sort it out. Before I try and mess around getting a cable outside, just want to see if it works up here. So it won't take too long. Got my extension lead here. I'm going to plug it in, give it a supply, and then pull for heat and see if it switches reliably up there. If not, it's not the end of the world. We're just going to have to get a cable outside. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Right, so we're just taking these off here. Now using my extension lead and just one of these receivers on a plug top, I just tried switching these remotely. So we've wired the transmitter back into the UH8. So upstairs, when one of the thermostats calls, it then puts voltage onto the boiler enable, which fires up the transmitter. And this was switching no problem. So what I've done is just taken both of these off, just put them both in an adaptable box. This is going to keep it neat, and also it just means that we're just running one 4-core cable rather than 2, because obviously they both go onto the boiler enable controls in this little joint box. So I'm going to put the lid on this, and I'm just going to try switching, see if it's switching in this position. This hasn't taken long to mount. It's just plasterboard, so just some plasterboard fixings, get the box on the wall. I'm just going to temporarily Wago the cable in, and if it works, great. We'll just clip this cable nicely. Using these metal P-clips. These are my new favourite things for armoured cable, tough flex, and in this case HO7 rubber flex. Means you can get a plasterboard fixing in, because just hammering ordinary cable clips into this, it just pulls straight out, so it keeps it nice and neat. So let's have a look, see if this is going to work. Fingers crossed, because that's going to save me a lot of messing around outside. Right, so there's my cable rod poking out. Unfortunately, and rather annoyingly, when I've mounted both these temporarily in the adaptable box, it's not switching. So I've brought it out here to where I intend to mount it. So we're coming up, clipping some rubber flex along underneath the sill there, the step, and then we'll just mount the box there, I think, providing that it's switching okay. So you see, temporarily, bit of cowboy wiring, just to, you know, giving this a permanent supply off the reel, and then that's the switch out. Actually, you can see there already, one of those is receiving a live out signal. So let's just, I'll have to go with some switching, make sure it's switching, and then we'll do this properly. Right, so with the box lid on upright where it is, they're switching fine, quickly, reliably. So now we've just got to get the cable in, down into the heating cupboard, and we'll get it connected into the controls. Right, so that's the box on the wall. What's nice about this style of adaptable box whisker is the fixings go external to the inside, so there's no screw holes in here, so there's no chance for moisture to get in once the lid's on. So it's IP65, it says on the front there, which is going to be more than enough. It's quite a sheltered garden anyway. It's going to be more than enough to keep these nice and dry. Look at that, you'd never know, would you? So I've just clipped it underneath that step. And it just jumped up. Got to keep it obviously visible on the surface. Can't bury it because it's not armoured. And then it just pops down into that hole down there next to this. Looks like some sort of condensate pipe or something. Right, so you can see up there the cable coming in. Managed to fish it along here. Just dropped it out of that hole there. A couple of clips, swooped it into the box. So kept it nice and discreet, and then I've just blanked off that other hole that we're not using. So if either of those receivers receives a signal, it's just jointed onto the same switch wire, so switch live back to fire the boiler. So let's juice it up and just make sure that the boiler's firing when it's being asked to fire. Right, so we're here at the boiler outside. I'm just checking to make sure that it's firing. While I'm here, I'm just going to swap out this bit of, just, you can see here we've got armoured cable coming in, which is fine. Bit of, maybe a little bit of heat damage, I don't know, or just a bit of, it's alright that, it's alright, but then it joints onto just ordinary twin and earth, and you can see it's been pressed up against hot pipes there. It's just getting a bit brittle and a bit old, so just going to replace that with some of the heat resistant flex just to finish this job off. Right, so you can see the armoured cable comes in, well, that's the inner sheath of the armoured cable. I've just reused that same joint box. It comes in 6mm, slightly over spec, but there we go. And we've got the heat resistant rubber flex. This will just cable tied it up here, keep it out of the way of the inner workings. So I'm just going to go and fire this back up. We'll get the test lamps on here, make sure it's all working properly. Right, so you can see there we've got 1 volt between earth and the switch live leaving the boiler. Right, so we've just fired one of the stats. You can see now we've got 240 volts. And there we go, we just turned it off. Obviously can't film and tweak the heating at the same time on the phone. This is why you need a camera crew, like Artisan. That's how you know you've made it. Anyway, happy with that.